Okay, having reached that appointed time, I would like to welcome everyone to the June 21st, 2021 regular meeting of the Harnett County Board of Commissioners. At this time, would ask Commissioner Matt Nickel if he'll give our pledge of allegiance, or lead us in our pledge of allegiance and invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Dear Lord, most gracious and heavenly Father, thank you for another wonderful day. Thank you for letting us tend to your land and the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us. Lord, I pray that you be with this Board of Commissioners today and let us make the best decisions to represent the citizens of this county. Lord, please be with our first responders, our military, and law enforcement. Be with them as they protect our health and our freedoms that we have. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. At this time, we'll consider any additions or deletions to the published agenda.
Mr. Chairman, we have several budget amendments that were not included, and normally we would just hold them till the next meeting, but we need to do these before the end of the fiscal year. So with that, I'm going to ask Kimberly Honeycutt to go over those with you. You have them at your desk, but since you didn't have time to review them, I've asked her to go over it in detail with you. Kimberly?
Thank you.
Basically, you have before you three budget amendments. The first budget amendment, which is budget amendment number 716B, is for the Transportation Department. And that is actually to reverse a budget amendment that was approved in error by the board. When it was discovered that this budget amendment was not needed, it had already been approved by the board. So to follow through with proper approval process, you approve to amend the budget. You now have to approve to put it back. So that's just a reversal. The next one that we're looking at is 725B. That is to budget additional funds needed to cover the governing body's salaries, which would be yours. When we went on with our new system, we are working now to pull salaries in and let it automatically populate in that budget module. And this was the first year budgeting that we did that, and we realized that it did not appropriate enough funds. So where we have funds set aside in contingency, we're just moving that over. No pay increases, just to make sure that we cover what you currently owe you. And then the last one, I do not have a number on it yet, but it is for the JCPC program, and that is to return unspent grant funds in the amount of $44,375, and that is for the JCPC grant, the Take Two at the Academy grant, and Healthy Choices. And so when we refund this money, we have to have a budget in place to be able to write that out. And those funds were actually received in the prior year, rolled over, so now we're appropriating those to return those funds. But as Mr. Wood had stated, we need to have these budget amendments approved before the end of our fiscal year so that we can be in compliance with this.
So, Mr. Chairman, what we're asking you to do is add these under B in the consent agenda with the other budget amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Can I ask the question?
Yes, Mr. McCoy.
These money is being returned, is it being returned back to the state?
Back to the state.
State.
Oh, well, the grants were that they came from, so they would be probably from different departments. I don't know them specifically in front of them.
Well,
Normally, those do represent grant funds.
Okay, I understand that. That's the reason I'm asking, because I'm on the JPC board. I want to know where was the money being returned to.
Yes, ma'am. Right back where it came from.
Anything else? Okay, you've heard the three budget amendments, request to add those to, tell me the letter again, Mr. Wood.
B, under budget amendments, consent agenda budget amendments.
Yeah, what was the letter for that? Oh, I see, B.
B.
Under the consent agenda, budget amendments, B.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the amended agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the amended agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherspoon. Do we have a second?
Johnson, seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. This time I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank Commissioner Nichol for the motion, Commissioner Witherspoon for the second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We now enter time, we'll have a period of up to 30 minutes for remarks. Anyone desiring to speak will have 3 minutes to make your remarks. Speaker may not speak more than once during this public comment period. The speaker shall address the board from the podium and begin your remarks by stating your name and residential address. We ask all speakers to maintain proper decorum and make your comments in a civil manner. And we also ask that you would refrain from personal attacks and use of any obscene or profane language during this time. I see you there. Mr. Rivas, if you just allow me to, I think we had a couple that, comments that came in. Let us read those into the record, and then I'll recognize you. Thank you.
Okay, I have one, dear Commissioner Witherspoon, understand that at the county commission meeting of June 21st or thereafter, the board will be considering.
Yeah, we have a microphone. Not, you can, Mr. Rivas, let her use that one. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that at the county commission meeting of June 21 or thereafter, the board will be considering whether to award one-time bonuses to county and school system employees. I would like to comment on the proposal, but will be out of town on that date, so I request that you read my letter aloud during the citizen comment section of the meeting and enter it into the record. It is true that employees have worked hard over the last year under trying circumstances. So it might seem appropriate to reward them for loyalty in working through the COVID shutdown, as Commissioner Matthews expressed it. But these are not normal circumstances. As of June 8, Harnett County's vaccination rate was 26.36%, fifth worst in North Carolina. If anything, available funding should be used for programs aimed at improving that terrible percentage. And any money for bonuses should only go to employees able and willing to prove they are vaccinated. That would send a strong message to the public that Harnett County, the largest employer, takes vaccinations seriously and that its employees are providing a positive example to the community at large. The sad fact about the pandemic is that it's not over yet. The Wall Street Journal reported recently that more deaths have occurred worldwide in the first 6 months of 2021 than in all of 2020. The Delta variant is already in the United States and is more than 60% more contagious than the original strand of COVID-19. It especially attacks young people who are more than twice as likely to require hospitalization, according to a new study reported this week. And vaccination is only 88% effective against the variant. You can still get COVID even if you've received the shots. These sobering facts change the calculus of awarding bonuses by adding a new aspect. It's not loyalty that matters most, but prudent behavior and vaccinations. Some might say such a criterion would be illegal. That may take years of litigation to determine with any finality. A federal judge in Texas recently ruled that hospitals can use vaccinations as a condition of employment. Harnett County need not adopt that strict standard, but I believe it can reasonably require that proof of vaccination be among eligibility factors for receipt of a one-time loyalty bonus. And I believe that reasonable members of the public would agree with that common sense approach. Thank you for considering my opinion. Sincerely, Richard S. Chapman.
Thank you. Was that the only one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Mr. Rivas?
Good evening. My name is Jerry Rivas, 364 Twin Ponds Road. Why should I have to have an ID card showing I've been vaccinated if I don't have to have one to vote? Anyway, late last week, a $6 million settlement was reached with the county's insurance carrier. for 6 police brutality lawsuits. And I think it's a shame whether this could be taken as an opportunity to move forward. It wasn't. Sheriff Coates issued a statement saying he stands behind the actions of his deputies. The actions that cost an innocent man his life, and one way or another, the taxpayers of this county, $6 million, because your liability rates are going to go up and we're the ones that are going to foot the bill. My mother told me when I was a young man, and there have been times where I didn't listen to her, she told me it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And once again, Sheriff Coates has removed all doubt. Now, this man absolutely refuses to get body cameras. I think that you as a governing body ought to pass an ordinance making it mandatory for all police agencies in this county to have body cameras. This man spent $90,000 on a Chevy Tahoe, a vehicle for his personal use. At $5,000 a piece for the top-of-the-line body camera, that's 18 body cameras. You can get used body cameras for as little as $500 a piece. That's 180 of them. Why would anybody be against the use of, if Nick Cahagas would have been wearing a body camera, do you think maybe he would have been so quick to violate John Livingston's rights that day? If any of the deputies named in that lawsuit would have been wearing body cameras, do you think maybe their egos wouldn't have outweighed their badges and they would have remembered the oath they took to serve and protect and to uphold the Constitution? Sheriff Coates says his number one priority is that his deputies get home safe every night. When I ran for sheriff, my number one priority was the safety of the citizens of Harnett County. If you're that blasted scared of your job, Pizza Hut is hiring, for God's sakes. Go do something else. If every situation requires you to go for that gun, go do something else. And there's still 4 lawsuits pending. You got a deputy that killed a man's dog and then lied about it. Good God. I mean, when are we going to say enough is enough and hold people accountable? When are you, as a governing body, going to force his hand? You have the power to do it. You have the power of the budget. Put a stop to this man. And it's not just him. It's been going on for 60 or 70 years. It's got to stop. This is 2021, not 1921. Jim Crow is dead.
Thank you, Mr. Rivas. That was a different ringtone. I wasn't. That's okay. I've adjusted. I've adjusted. Thank you. Okay, anyone else desiring to speak? Mr. Langley? Thank you. Sorry.
And I gave Mr. Wood a copy of my handout. And I'm Joe Langley, 298 Kirk Adams Road. And I am here today representing 8,302 people in Harnett County. Now, none of those 8,302 people know that I'm representing them, but what am I here to talk about? Resilience in Harnett County. This is an initiative through the partnership and through a collaboration, but let's talk about it real quick. One part of building a resilience in local communities is for families and children is affordable and accessible health coverage. Positive outcomes are directly linked to families and children that have health insurance, and we know that this coverage is especially important in creating healthy and resilient families. Sadly, many middle-class working families fall into the coverage gap because they do not qualify for Medicaid, but they make too little to qualify for a health insurance subsidy. Tomorrow, Care for Carolina is hosting a meeting And I apologize for the very, very late invitation, but it's downstairs at 2 o'clock. And this is an opportunity for the commissioners to become very informed about this issue by one of the leading consultants for Care for Carolina, a lady named Peg O'Connell. To give you some statistics on the second page, I'd like you to review. These are facts. They're documented. The reference is at the bottom of the page. Again, there's 8,302 people in this county that don't have access, in no way to access insurance. Closing the gap and providing coverage for these people would provide 344 new jobs, $51 million in business activity in Harnett County. That is not an error. That is a correct number. 51 million. 1,445,900 in new county revenue that the county needs. Closing the coverage gap is also necessary in fighting the opioid crisis. Hundreds of uninsured local people with substance abuse disorders could not receive treatment because they didn't have access to affordable coverage. In 2017, sadly, we had 31 opioid deaths and 59 emergency department visits for opioid overdose. If you look at one of the states that did close the coverage gap, you'll see a quote. Opioid deaths in Dayton, Ohio dropped 54% thanks to closing the coverage gap. Thank God we expanded Medicaid. That quote is from Ohio Governor John Kasich in 2018. All I'm asking you folks to do is do this. Show up for this meeting and learn about what this is about. Make a very informed decision on moving forward with this, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Langley. Anyone else?
Rose Teniente, 179 Tilden Howington Drive. I'm here tonight on behalf of Breathe Harnett members to express our sincere concern and frustration that our Board of Commissioners, as well as county leadership, are dragging their feet on ensuring that Harnett County becomes a more fair, equitable, and inclusive place to live and work. At the last commissioner meeting, the commissioners voted to table moving forward with diversity, equity, and inclusion training for staff, citing their preference to wait on potential passage of House Bill 324 at the extremely, I would venture to say, misguided and misinformed recommendation of our interim county manager. For one, House Bill 324 pertains to the North Carolina education system, to the school system. It does not dictate what county or municipal governments can and cannot train their staff on. So I'm pretty confused here as to why Mr. Wood has advised you that any proposed diversity training might become illegal. Secondly, I heard Mr. Wood say that it was likely that this bill would become a law. This bill is extremely hyper-partisan. It passed the House on pure party lines, so we can definitely anticipate a veto coming forward should it pass through the Senate. This bill seeks to prohibit what can be taught in the classroom or the school's work environment, citing that no training should promote the concept that individuals bear responsibility for actions committed in the past by other members of the same race or gender, and that individuals should not feel discomfort, guilt, or anguish. It also says that you can't teach that individuals can be unconsciously racist. For one, I would venture to say it's clear that the legislators who drafted this bill have never read or are remaining willfully ignorant of the hundreds of peer-reviewed studies on unconscious or implicit bias in a slew of areas, including hiring, salary, medical care, and the justice system, just to name a few. One of the studies show that Black defendants are at least twice as likely to receive the death penalty in capital cases than white defendants. North Carolina is still paying out reparations to victims of its eugenics program, where Black men and women were disproportionately sterilized and had their reproductive rights stolen from them, and at least 55 victims were sent to the eugenics board by none other than our Harnett County Board of Commissioners themselves when this was going on. I've been to numerous trainings on racial bias, historical and racial trauma, as well as promoting equity within local government. Never once has a trainer or facilitator told me that I should feel guilt or shame over our history or the current state of our county and nation, where inequalities continue to persist today because of those harmful racist actions of the past, but also because of the inaction of people like you right now. Maybe you and I didn't individually cause the inequalities of today, but it's our collective and our individual responsibility to correct these wrongs of the past because they are still persisting right now. These collective atrocities that were committed continue to dictate the circumstances of our neighbors, our coworkers, the people that we serve, and their family members. It dictates how they are living, earning, and surviving in a country that was built on their ancestors' backs and not for their benefit. You should be doing everything that you can to address these inequities and taking ownership of the responsibility that you have upon you right now by virtue of your positions here in office as professing Christians and as human beings. Because if it's not our responsibility to right these wrongs, then whose is it going to be?
Thank you. We have someone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Campbell, 8600 27 West. I recently had the gun violence awareness event on Saturday. Born and raised in Harnett County, gun violence has always been an issue, and there's nothing that has been done since I've been here out of my 34 years to really acknowledge and do something about it. Taking the stand to be able to do something about it, the county made it extremely hard for me, and I was very disappointed at the fact that many people did not respond to my emails. A lot of people were very nasty to me because I wanted to do something positive. We've had, in North Carolina, we rank like 11th, and we shouldn't be after Chicago and New York, those major cities, in our gun violence statistics. And I feel like it's extremely sad. We really need to do something because as an African American, I feel like that something should be done. In North Carolina, we only make 25% of this population. However, we are 60% of the people that are being killed. So that is a high stat. And to see that I've reached out to so many people that refuse to help me or that were talking negative to me or already assumed that this was going to be a negative event, to even it to be said that something was going to happen to the Harnett County Courthouse or to make me jump through so many hoops to do something positive, I think is just extremely saddening. And I feel like as a county, something should be done to take care of these issues that are being done. We have lost a lot of people in Harnett County due to gun violence. They may not have gotten killed here. A lot of them have. They've gotten killed outside of our county. But something really needs to be done to bring awareness to these things, because I wasn't till I got older that I realized, hey, I've known this my entire life and it's an issue. So if we want to have change, we have to be the change that we want to see, and we should not make it hard for those people who want to make a change. We shouldn't make it difficult for them to bring forth change, especially when I asked to make sure that I did everything that the county asked of me and wanted to do it in the proper manner to make sure that I respected the county that I was born and raised in. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sheila Hill, 235 Shepherd Drive. I am a local business owner here in Lillington. And my question is the fiscal recovery funding that's coming to Harnett County. How are we to access that funding, and what is the qualifications for that funding?
This is a public comment time. It's not, it's not one where,
Okay.
We will respond to, but if you'll touch base with
Believe me,
Mr. Wood,
Okay.
following, or if you'll give him a call tomorrow, y'all can set up a time, he can help you with that.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Anyone on the phone? Okay, hearing none, we will call this time of public comment closed and move on to item 6 on the agenda. That would be appointments.
I'm probably going to have our assistant
Mr.
manager,
Chairman, we have a
Amy,
couple of
call me.
appointments.
He's in.
Make a motion that
But he's our
we
contact
appoint
for
Ms.
that.
Shirley Allen to the Mid-Carolina Aging Advisory Committee effective June 30, 2021, and that we appoint reappoint Mr. Ken Adelberg and Mr. Ricky Ray to the District H Tourism Authority Development Board for a term to expire on June 30, 2024.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. We have a motion to accept these appointments. Do I have a second?
Johnson seconds that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have on the agenda, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the County of Harnett to provide for the issuance of up to $43 million in general obligation school bonds, Series 2021. Someone want to just speak to that briefly?
I can.
Yes, ma'am.
This
Ms.
is
Honeycutt, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Kimberly Honeycutt. As reviewed during our work session last week, this will be the last piece of issuing these bonds for the school construction. As we've discussed previously, there are a series of steps that the board has to take in order for us to be able to issue these bonds. And essentially, this resolution, if you approve it this evening, will authorize us to issue up to $43 million in GO bonds, and these will be the remaining bonds of the $100 million that were authorized by the voters in 2014. And we're scheduled to sell these bonds July 13th.
Thank you very much. And I believe the majority of this funding will go to the new Northwest Harnett Elementary School.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve this resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve this resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Any discussion on this? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Honeycutt. All right, next on the agenda is a resolution regarding the Town of Lewington's request for an extension of development rights within the county. Mr. Appel?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. I presented this on your work session. The Town of Lillington and the developer of a tract that's called the Winston Tract by Greenfield Communities is requesting that exclusive planning and development regulation jurisdiction be assigned to the Town of Lillington. A majority of these parcels are within the Town of Lillington's ETJ, with a portion of it being located within the county. And under statute 160D-203, both governing bodies can adopt a resolution assigning the exclusive planning and development regulation jurisdiction to one of the other jurisdictions. Therefore, I presented this resolution to you. Also, what was just handed out to you is an Exhibit A, which will be attached, which is the request by the developer as well, requesting this this assignment. And the Town of Lillington, is my understanding, intends to adopt their resolution next month at their board meeting. If there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Appel? Hearing none, do I hear a motion on this request?
Make a motion that we approve this resolution for the Town of Lillington.
Thank you, Commissioner Witherspoon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Any further discussion? All in favor of the resolution regarding the Town of Lillington's request for extension of development rights within the County of Harnett, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Appel. Next on the agenda is a public hearing for proposed land use plan amendment, case number Plan 2105-0001. So at this time, I will call the public hearing to order. Speakers, if there is anyone to make comments, as with the public comments, please address the board from the podium. Begin your remarks by stating your name and residential address. Speakers' comments need to address or be related to the subject of the public hearing. We would ask that all speakers maintain proper decorum and make all comments in a civil manner without personal attacks or use of obscene or profane language. And Mark, I will let you kick it off.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Got a couple of cases tonight from Development Services. The first case is a land use plan map amendment. The applicant, who is Woodshire Partners, or is the owner and the applicant 4D Site Solutions, is requesting an amendment from agricultural and rural residential to medium density residential. The site is 72.6 acres and is located in Anderson Creek Township on Nursery Road within the county. As I mentioned in your work session, this is not a typical request that you see routinely. This is something for our land use plan, but it works very similar to a rezoning request. So I'll just go through the typical staff report as I would if it were rezoning. The property is vacant land, and per the application, it's the last remaining tract for the final phase of the existing development. All other sections of this development are within the MDR land use classification. Surrounding land uses consist of single-family residences and several undeveloped parcels. This site is serviced by public water as well as public sewer. Staff done an evaluation of the site, and the requested land use classification change to medium density residential will not have a negative impact on the surrounding properties, as the same classification exists for the adjacent properties. Second, the requested land use classification is compatible with the existing land use, as the classification is of a residential nature and the same classification on the adjacent properties. And third, the requested medium density residential classification would enhance or maintain the public health, safety, and general welfare since the zoning will be maintained as a RA20R. Therefore, permitted uses, lot sizes, etc. would all remain the same. And the suggested statement of consistency, as explained in the evaluation, the requested land use map amendment is compatible with the Harnett County regulatory documents. It would not have an unreasonable impact on the surrounding community due to the existing medium density residential designation. Areas adjacent to this property, as well as maintaining the current zoning district. Therefore, it is recommended that this classification request be approved. This case, and just for additional information, on June 7th, the Harnett County Planning Board voted unanimously 4-0 to approve this as well. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm available for comment.
Thank you, Mr. Locklear. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Locklear at this time? Thank you. Anyone here that would like to speak to this matter, please approach the podium.
Scott Brown, 409 Chicago Drive, Suite 112, Fayetteville, North Carolina. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the phone outburst a while ago. I thought I had that thing turned off, but apparently I did not have it turned off.
That's all right. Happens to all of us.
Well, it's embarrassing. It happened to me as many times as I've been in these type of meetings. Anyway, moving on. Not wanting to repeat what Mr. Locklear just said a few minutes ago. We have been talking, working with staff. We've been involved with the development, providing engineering and surveying services out at Woodshire and Forest Oaks. These are the last two sections in the development that's been going on for several years now. And this development, as Mr. Locklear mentioned a while ago, is made up of, on the land use plan, it's designated as agricultural. It's still zoned RA20, but it's got an agricultural designation, which impacts the lot sizes, setbacks, etc. If you look at the compatibility chart as listed in the UDO. And what we're asking for tonight is that the board follow suit with staff's recommendation and planning board's recommendation to modify these two land uses to medium density residential would be consistent with the remainder of the prior phases, so that these last two phases could be developed in similar manner as the prior phases on this Woodshire and Forest Oaks property. And I'll be glad to answer any questions the board may have of me at this time, or any questions that may arise later during discussion.
Mr. Brown, how many houses are we talking about?
Talking about there's a conservation easement that splits the property. There's about 70 on each side, so talking about a total of 140 residences.
Do you have line capacity for the sewer coming out of there?
Yes, sir. We have, a lift station was put in on the back end of this property just for servicing the remaining undeveloped property of this development. And we're gonna put a sewer outfall in that will serve both properties, and there is capacity to be served with both water and sewer and, from Harnett Regional Water.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gordon?
The distance between the houses, how far are they gonna be apart?
How far
The houses?
the lots are, if I recall correctly, they're about 70 foot wide based on the compatibility chart. And like I said, there is open space, conservation easement that separates the two phases. You got a phase 7 and a phase 8. Phase 7 is on the southern side of the conservation easement. The northern side would be phase 8. And they're both about 71 lots each as it stands right now. And those are, like I said, those are currently laid out in accordance with the prior phases, and assuming that the medium density residential gets approved, so we can proceed in that general direction. But we're sitting at a standstill until we can get this board's decision tonight. Then we'll move forward based on how the board decides.
Any other questions for Mr. Wood? Excuse me, Mr. Brown?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, appreciate it. Is there anyone here that would like to, anyone else here that would like to speak regarding this matter? Anyone on the phone? Okay, well, at this time, seeing no one move, we will call the public hearing on this matter closed. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the rezoning request for Woodshire Partners, their 72.6 acre parcel from agricultural and rural residential to a medium density residential.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson seconds the motion.
Thank you for the motion, Commissioner Nichol. Thank you for the second, Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion? You hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to number 10 on the agenda, the proposed text amendment, case number plan 2105-0002. Mr. Locklear?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The second request tonight is a text amendment request. This request is, the applicant is Harnett County Development Services. The request is a new addition and a revision to our Unified Development Ordinance, specifically Article 7, 13.1, and 13.2. And it pertains to amend the Harnett County's UDO where it pertains to greenway, bicycle, and pedestrian facilities. I'm gonna go ahead and read the suggested statement of consistency, but then I'll go and talk about exactly what the change is about. The requested text amendment is compatible with the Harnett County regulatory documents, specifically the recently approved Harnett County Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Greenway Plan. Therefore, is recommended that this text amendment be approved. This was also heard at the June 7th Harnett County Planning Board, where they also voted unanimously 4-0 to support this change. As we discussed in your work session, this change specifically deals with when it gets to the changes in regards to greenway planning for the county. Basically, the first portion of it in 13.1 deals with situations where existing developments are in place. It basically lays out a pathway that will give developers an opportunity to construct greenway paths in lieu of the required recreational fee that's required by the county. And that would work, as I mentioned in our work session, that would be done through a developer's agreement and would go back and forth between the planning board, not the planning board, but the development review board, advisory commission from Parks and Rec, and then obviously at the end of the day, this board ultimately making the final decision on whether or not to accept the proposal that is provided to us by the developer at that time. 13.2 is the new section, and it deals specifically with bicycle pedestrians and the Greenway Plan, where obviously if there's a new development that's in place and it's adjacent to a proposed area in which the county has set forth in that plan that we would like to see a greenway, they would be required to construct that portion of the greenway for their particular area as it's required to do. Basically, 13.2 just sets out the requirements on how that's done. It's very brief, pretty streamlined approach to that, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Locklear. Any questions for Mr. Locklear at this time? Other commissioners? Okay, hearing none, I will declare the public hearing on this case open. Again, if you'll abide by the guidelines that were mentioned in the prior case. Anyone who'd like to speak to this matter, please approach. Do we have anyone online or on the phone who would like to comment on this matter? Hearing none, we'll declare the public hearing on the proposed text amendment closed. This time I'll entertain a motion on this request.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to amend the Harnett County's UDO, sections 13.1, 13.2, where it pertains to the Greenway bicycle and pedestrian facilities.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel, for the motion, Commissioner Witherspoon for the second. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a proposed text amendment, Harnett County Unified Development Ordinance, Article 3, 7.
14.
14, thank you.
That's a tough one.
Let's get ready to say 9, that would embarrass me,
Yeah,
so.
that's okay.
Mr. Locklear?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our last case tonight is also a new addition and a revision to our Unified Development Ordinances, as you just mentioned, Article 3, 7, and 14, Sections 2.0, 4.0, 2.2, 2.0, and 4.0. And it has to deal with our the required amendments that we were required to make for the 160D changes by North Carolina General Statute. This amendment brings consistency to the definitions as referenced in the newly adopted language of 160D. A quick summary of these changes are all development permits and approvals are valid for 12 months versus 6 months, as we discussed in your work session. Historic Preservation District provisions shall be referred to as standards rather than guidelines. Historic Preservation Certificate of Appropriateness reviews shall follow a quasi-judicial process. Historic Preservation Certificate of Appropriateness appeal shall be filed 30 days after decision. And then last, it must not include, we must not exclude a manufactured home based on age. And in Harnett County, it's always been 1976. We can't say that anymore, but what we do require is that it's built to HUD standards, which happened in 1976. So our ordinance will not specifically say that anymore, but you will be required to, when you place a mobile home in Harnett County, that it be built to HUD standards. So that is remaining in our ordinance. But other than that, the suggested statement of consistency, the requested text amendment are compatible with the Harnett County regulatory documents as well as the North Carolina general statutes. Therefore, it is recommended that this text amendment request be approved. This was also heard June 7th by the Harnett County Planning Board, voted unanimously 4-0 to recommend approval. No one spoke in opposition for this case. And as you all know, this is required by general statute that we make these changes. And this is the last one.
Thank you, Mr. Locklear. Any questions for Mr. Locklear? Okay. At this time, we'll call the public hearing on this proposed text amendment open. Again, abiding by the guidelines mentioned previously, is there anyone who would like to speak on this matter? Is there anyone on the phone who would like to speak on this matter? Hearing no one and seeing no movement in the room, we will close this public hearing. At this time, I'll entertain a motion on this proposed text amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to amend the Harnett County's UDO, Article 3, 7, and 14, in order to comply with the national or North Carolina general statute.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel for the motion, Commissioner Weatherspoon for the second. Any discussion on this? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item we have tonight is a motion to authorize a second round of requests for proposals for executive search firms for the county manager employment process. Mr. Wood, you want to speak briefly to that?
Yes, sir.
In case anybody was not
At our work session.
listening at the work session? Yes, sir.
At our work session, I had suggested that we basically turn down the previous proposals you had received and then move forward with re-advertising. Since then, I've had time to think about it a little bit more, and I talked with Chris Appel about it. What we're recommending here is that you keep those in play and just authorize a second round. So in other words, the 5 you received, you keep them active, and then we go out for a second round. We are prepared to do that. We have everything ready to go tomorrow if you approve this. I will tell you that the issue was that you did not get a large response. And one of the reasons for that is we didn't send it out to as many people as we possibly could have that do this job. We did contact Buncombe County, and the reason for that is while I was the interim over there, we went through this process and we hired an executive search firm, but the RFP went out to about 15 or 16 firms. So we have that list. We have met. We've decided which ones we're going to send that out to, and so you should get a much better response this time around. I don't know what the quality will be, but I do know that some of them that are on there are very good firms, and some are known not just regionally but nationwide. So I think we'll get a much better response. The good news is we're going to give the same amount of time on this one as we gave on round 1, and that's about 17 or 18 days to respond. So we have these coming back in on July the 9th. And as you know, you have a work session on July the 13th. We don't meet again until then. So as soon as we get them in, we'll try to make copies or send electronic copies to you so that before the 13th, you have an opportunity to go through the ones that we've received. And so hopefully that'll make our work session more productive. And then hopefully on the 20th then, y'all can make a decision on which 3 to 5 firms you want to call in for interviews. And then we'll move as quickly as possible after that to select one, come to terms on the conditions of employment, and then get going on it.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Yeah, hearing the recommendation from Mr. Wood, do I have a motion on authorization of a second round of requests for proposals for executive search forms for the county manager employment process?
I make a motion that we authorize the second round of RFP for search firms.
Thank you, Commissioner Weatherspoon. Do I have a second?
Second. Seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Any further discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I did fail to say that I have that list. If any of you want to see it, we'd be happy to furnish it.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Thank you.
Next, we have item 13 on the agenda, motion to authorize COVID-19 employee bonuses. Mr. Haney?
Good evening.
Hey, how are you tonight?
Doing all right. This request is for approval of a one-time supplement for county employees and Harnett County Schools classified staff based on the following parameters I'll go over, which were established by the board during your June 15th work session. To clarify, I think the newspaper printed that it would apply to certified and classified staff with Harnett County Schools. However, the board's discussion was just for classified staff. I've cleared that up with the superintendent and with the paper. This supplement would be given based on employees' continued work in support of government operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. If approved, a supplement will be given to all current full-time and part-time county employees and Harnett County Schools classified staff who were employed as of March 1st, 2020, just prior to the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Qualifying full-time employees would receive a one-time supplement of $1,000, and qualifying part-time employees would receive a one-time supplement of up to $500 prorated based on the hours they worked during the pandemic. This supplement does not apply to election workers who received hazard pay for their work during the 2020 general election. And by election workers, I want to make sure I clarify, I'm talking about the poll workers, not the actual election staff. This supplement would be funded using the remaining $406,979.43 from the county's displaced coronavirus relief fund allocation, with the remaining balance coming from the county's fund balance, which includes a transfer of $644,682.10 from the county's displaced CRF allocation in FY 2020 that was used to cover salaries, which ultimately was not needed. You also have a sheet that shows the breakdown of the cost. The total cost would be $1,814,385.75, roughly.
Thank you, Mr. Haney. One question I would have, I know we talked about that would be employees being employed as of March 1st and still employed with Harnett County in order to receive this bonus. I guess my question would be, do we need to establish, I know we talked about it, do it in July because of in the fiscal year responsibilities of the finance department. Do we need to, my question would be, do we need to set a date in July that would be the cutoff date for you folks so that, you know?
I would actually recommend it, and I know we've had conversations, we've not had a chance this afternoon to update Mr. Wood on our conversation, but one of the things that we had talked about was that if we do pay it as of July the 31st, which that is for wages through July 15th, I've done that again, cutting it off as of, so employees here as of July 15th.
July 15th.
Because traditionally, when we've done something like this in the past, you know, the last day of the month is cut off on the 15th of that month. So to try and stay consistent with our current practices, but that's something that we had kind of discussed earlier this afternoon, but we've not had a chance to discuss it with Mr. Wood.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so I do think that would be good to have a ending date so that we don't have any misconceptions going forward, I guess is what I would say. So thank you, Mr. Haney, for that presentation. Any other questions for Mr. Haney, Ms. McCoy?
I don't think it's very clear. You made it very clear when we're talking about March 2020 or 2021.
March 1st of 2020. So
2020.
it would be current employees as of the 15th of July who were with the county when the pandemic began on March 1st of 2020.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that because it just said March.
Right, right.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Any other questions for Mr. Haney?
We did discuss the proration. You did talk about that on the part-time.
Yes, and we would ask for, to allow staff to look at that and work through that proration, because if you were to prorate it based on the exact number of hours for each employee worked, you'd have to have a pay code for every employee. So we're looking at kind of some tier levels based on hours in general, if that's all right with the board.
That sounds fine with me. I'm not, I certainly don't want to complicate it to the point that you're going to have a budget code for every employee. So we'll let you folks work through the best way to make those decisions as far as I'm concerned. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Do I hear a motion to authorize the COVID-19 employee bonuses as shared by Mr. Haney and as discussed at the previous work session?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize the COVID-19 employee bonuses as presented by Mr. Haney and during our work session.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Do I have a second?
Johnson seconds.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Taney.
Thank you very much.
Next, item 14 on the agenda is a motion on proposed changes to the fleet management vehicle lease program. Ms. McFadden, you want to introduce anything, or Mr. Wood, on that? I know we discussed that in the work session as well.
I think we discussed it pretty thoroughly. I think the only difference of opinion we have is that their recommendation calls for some punitive action if a department head goes over the mileage. And I'm recommending to you, we do everything they're talking about except that. Because I think in this, you're giving the fleet manager the authority to basically move vehicles around if they are using excessive mileage on one and not enough on another. So given they already have that authority, I don't know that we need to do the punitive stuff. If we find we continue to have a problem with a department head, my feeling is that's a management issue and your county manager can deal with that.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any questions for Ms. McFadden or Mr. Wood by any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, do I entertain a motion on this request?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the changes for the fleet management vehicle lease program, including the requested change by Mr. Wood regarding taking away punitive actions for any of those that go over mileage because of the fleet manager that'll be in place.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. Do I have a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing none, this time we'll vote on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item 15, a discussion and possible action on the reopening of county meetings. I think I need to apologize to Mr. Wood and the commissioners, as this was really one that I had asked to be put on the work session, and then I think we got to that point. I must have been ready for us to end because I turned over to Mr. Wood and never helped him out with it. So tonight I'll try to do a little bit better job with that. I asked Mr. Wood in his presentation that we passed at the last voting session about reopening for the county and county meetings, about the call-in portion of the meetings that we've had in place since COVID. You know, these meetings are on YouTube. We've now opened up the room for the public to come and make comments. We can have comments through email or snail mail, if you will, or whatever way. It's not been as distracting recently. I don't know if it's because many people are not tuning in or what, but, you know, for phones not to be muted and all that feedback and beeps that keep going on. So my question was, do we need to continue having that call-in portion? I really don't see that I would think we do, but I certainly wanted to leave that up to the rest of the commissioners as well to discuss that. And along with that, do we want to draw our space back in here so that Commissioner Nickel and Commissioner Weatherspoon can be sitting here, which was designed pre-COVID. So those are types of things I wanted to get your thoughts on with regard to the reopening. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Mr. McCoy?
Certainly do. As you heard the statement for the young man, the gentleman sent up here, to be read by our clerk. The virus is not over. And there are, the Delta is out there. And we don't know if everybody's had shots. We can't ask people if they've had shots. So I don't feel that we should change anything that we have up here as far as the separation of us, because my health is very important to me, and the health of the ones that are coming to these meetings is very important to them. So that is, I don't foresee us doing that. I mean, not now, when there's a variance out there that said it's even more dangerous than the one that we already are facing. And it's growing fast in North Carolina simply because the people here in North Carolina don't want to take the shots. Harnett County is one of the leading counties too. So that's my opinion. I don't know what the rest of you think, but that is my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. McCoy. Any other comments? Any issue to discontinuing the call-in portion of these meetings?
I think we should.
Okay. Well, then let's, we don't need a motion on that, do we, since we, or do
I
we?
think it'd be good to have it in the
Okay.
minutes.
So someone want to make a motion that we'll continue the spacing that we have for the commissioners, but we will terminate the call-in portion since we have the YouTube and other media.
I think,
Hey,
got a
Mr.
comment.
Chairman, I think that should be two separate motions.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion on one of those items?
I'll make a motion to do away with the call-in portion to the county meetings.
Okay, we have a motion to end the call-in option for the county meetings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nichol, for the motion, Commissioner Weatherspoon for the second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Ms. McCoy, no. Got that? Okay. Motion carries. Now, is there a motion on the spacing for the commissioners?
I
Mr.
make a motion
Chairman,
that we maintain the spacing that we have for the commissioners,
Thank you.
based on the fact that the virus is still here.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Do we have a second? For purpose of discussion, I'll second that motion. Any further discussion on that? I've heard Ms. McCoy. Anybody else have anything you'd like to say? Okay, hearing no discussion at this time, we'll vote. All in favor of Ms. McCoy's motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
no.
No.
Mr. Johnson, how did you vote?
I voted to maintain the spacing like it is.
Okay, so we'll maintain the spacing for the current time. Okay, Mr. Wood, 16 county managers. Yes, sir, Mr. Nichol.
I know that it's been brought up a bunch, and I brought it up to Mr. Wood about how we've got 4, 1, 3, 2, and 5. Some citizens had brought it to my knowledge that we can actually line up for once, and I think that would be beneficial, because we can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's all lined up according to our districts. So I make a motion that we change our chair positions as we are seated up here to be in District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, we have a motion to change the seating of the commissioners to reflect the districts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, have a motion by Commissioner Nichol, have a second by Commissioner Weatherspoon. Any discussion?
I have something to say.
Ms.
about
McCoy?
that. Why? Why? So you can put me on the end?
No, because it's aesthetically pleasing, especially when people are tuning in and listening, that it's 1,
We
2,
have
3,
never
4.
done it like that, so why are you suggesting to do it now?
Then why is it lined up the way that it is now, it would be my question.
Well, I think maybe it's because something has to do with my seniority here. I should not be on the end.
Any further comments? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion to change the commissioner seating by District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will say that Well, that certainly works at the current setup. If there's another chair going forward, it may well not be conducive to work that way, since I think you'd want your chair in the middle. But I'll just point that out going forward. Okay, any other comments? All right, this time, all in favor of the motion to change the commissioner seating, and I'm guessing we'd begin at the next meeting if this were to pass. All those in favor of that, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay, that'd be all right, Mr. Johnson was a no. Did you get that? Okay. All right, the motion carries. That brings us to item 16, County Manager's Report. Mr. Wood?
Mr. Chairman, all the things listed there are just various reports and summaries there, but I did want to add two things. Well, first of all, the update on bond ratings, I think I went ahead and sent you out an email.
You did.
That talked about the bond ratings. We stayed at S&P, we stayed at AA minus. We were hoping for just a AA, but we didn't quite make it. But they have said they switched from a neutral to a positive, which means they're looking at it carefully, and that if present trends continue, they've said there's a possibility we'll get an upgrade the next time we go to the bond market. So just wanted to update you there. But staying where we're at, you have one AA and one AA minus, and those are all very good ratings. One other thing I did want to point out to you, if you're not aware of it, North Carolina, because of the local government commission and such a tight control on being able to issue debt, not every state is like that. And because of that, the bond market really sells bonds on North Carolina counties and municipalities at a half step better than what your rating is. So I wanted y'all to be aware of that. That's why we get such good ratings here in this state. You know, we all get a little tired sometimes of such strong oversight. We have to get their permission to do anything. But having worked in South Carolina where nobody tells you to do anything, I prefer this system. It keeps you out of trouble. So with that, the bond ratings are good. As Kimberly told you, we'll sell the bonds on July the 13th. I believe we close on them sometime in August, and then the schools will have the money available. Two things I wanted to mention. Well, one I've already done, and that's the RFP for the executive search firms, due back July 9th. The second thing is the ad for the economic director. We plan on having that out by this Wednesday. I've got to run a few more things by the HR director, and then we're ready to go on that. So those are the main things I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Any questions for Mr. Wood? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 17, new business. Is there any new business to come before this board tonight? Okay, hearing none, I believe we have need for a closed session.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I move that we go into closed session for the following purposes: consultation with the county's legal counsel in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege concerning the handling of certain claims and litigation, including the following case: Estate of John David Livingston II and others versus Cahagas and others, U.S. District Court, Eastern District of North Carolina, Western Division, file number 5, CV-00906-B0, and to discuss certain personnel matters, and to instruct the county staff concerning the position to be taken by the county in negotiating a contract for the acquisition of real property. This motion's made pursuant to North Carolina General Statute, Section 143-318.11A, 3, 6, and 5.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherspoon. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nickel. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. We'll go into closed session. back in place. Wave at, that it cut everything back on. Having had a motion to return open session, I will call us back into open session. At this time, we will recess until 9 a.m. June the 30th, when we'll reconvene in a virtual joint meeting with the Harnett County Board of Education to listen to a redistricting presentation with the Board of Education. I'll call us into recess. Thank you.
And that'll be here. Yeah.
It's